Part 43. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 426. Yan Ji wanted to get out in time, but his body seemed to be absorbed by a man, and he could no longer control it. It was too cold, and Yan Ji's strength was gone. She felt as if she had been frozen into ice from the inside out. Later, he lost consciousness. Yan Ji never expected that a sleeping man could sleep like this. Before she was unconscious, she thought, no matter how big the cookie was waiting in front, she couldn't sleep with the man casually. After all, there is no way to know what a man's skin is under the skin. When her consciousness was restored, Yan's head was still frizzy, as if the layer of ice that had wrapped her head had not melted away, making her first reaction was cold, so cold. Because of the cold, the brain cannot think. So she looked up and saw the back of a man with silver hair and white clothes standing in front of the window. She had a drowsy head, thinking about who it was and how it was in her room. He seemed to hear something, and the man turned and walked to the bed a few steps. Since this facial feature is similar to Hengchen's facial features, Yan Ji's head is agitated, and all thoughts are returned to this moment. The man asked the words, "Who sent you here?" His voice was relatively cold, and the interrogation was not moody, as if it were a routine interrogation. Yan Ji shook his head, this time, naturally pretend to be stupid. The man walked to the bed, reached out and pinched Yan Ji's wrist, and Reiki moved around in Yan Ji's body. It was about trying to get Yanj to regain some energy, but I don't know if it was because of his natural Bingling root or because of his exercises. At this moment, Yanj feels colder, like a cold fish in his body. After a long walk, she couldn't help shivering. The man also noticed Yanj's response, and he took a moment's notice, then retracted his hand. Seeing the song still bemused, he remembered that he hadn't introduced himself yet, so he said, "My name is..." Hesitated for a while, as if he had forgotten his own name, and then said, "You just call me Saburo." He was lethargic for too long, and no one called his name for a long time. The mundane name had long been forgotten, and he only vaguely remembered that he once seemed to be the third child. Yanj looked at a loss and was at a loss. "Saburo, what is this place?" "This is the cabernet," said the man, turning his head and looking out of the door, and whispering to the song, "The elders outside are asking for help. I will go out for a moment." Is this being reported to her? The relationship between the two people seems to end in one shot, right? Oh, there may be several shots, but it is not enough to report to her. Although Yan Ji was surprised, he didn't show it. The man turned and left, but Yu Guang looked at his eyes in a panic, thinking that this woman might be very upset about the current situation, and stretched out her hand, and touched her head unnaturally. "Don't be afraid, in the future you will. It's my Ji. Even if you don't cultivate, I will protect you." In a word, the back road of Yanj has been arranged, and he didn't feel that he was wrong at all. The words fell comfortably and pinched the words, and then turned and walked outwards. He didn't arrange enchantments or barriers, so when he went out, Yanj could listen to the conversation outside the door. "Father, congratulations." The voice sounded old, but the joy in the voice couldn't be masked. Called to be an ancestor man, his voice was cold. "Is there anything wrong with the gate?" "After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 427. While the man was talking, the consciousness had swept the whole Wuzong zone. Zongmen is okay. Since the ancestors are out of the customs, can they hold a celebration? The old man said here, with a little caution in his discourse. Is the ancestors' loopholes in the exercises already resolved? The ancestor said that it was a retreat, and only a few elders in Wuzong knew that the ancestors' practice had problems that needed to be solved. The man nodded. "No problem. Yes, I want to accept a Ji. I will hold a Naji ceremony." Yes. The two also said a few words, most of them were the old man reporting the situation of no delusion, and talking to the man that a new talented Bingling disciple was born inside the gate, hoping that the ancestors would accept it. Yanj bowed his head, his face thoughtful. There are many geniuses in Wulid Song. The first person in Xiaoxian realm is also from Wulid Song. It is said that the ancestral ancestors of Wulid Song are not only the first person in Xiaoxian realm, but also the Mahayana period, which means that half of them have stepped into the gate of ascension. This person claims that the ancestor of His Holiness Yuan is the root of Bingling, so the practice method is also the I system method. Listening to the words, Yan Ji confirmed the identity of the man. Turns out to be the old ancestor without arrogance. This time red dust sent her to a useful place. However, Hong Chen and Giwen's face are so similar to each other, and what is the relationship between Hong Chen and Giwen's passage in the man's house? Yan Ji was puzzled a lot. But when she heard the old man throwing up the new talented disciple, she couldn't help sneering. The presumed Suzy ain't must be Chen Sheng, because Chen Sheng is also the spiritual root of the I system. After the Wuzong Suzerain had finished speaking, another old man spoke to His Holiness Giwen and asked about the ascension period of historian Giwen. He wanted to come to this elder Wuzong. Yan Ji's body was still cold, and after listening for a while, they fell asleep involuntarily. Waking up again, the door was pushed open as soon as I opened my eyes. In a white suit, like Giwen, who came from the ice lotus in the snow, he raised his eyes and asked the words, "Is the body still uncomfortable?" He asked, and Yanj subconsciously covered his stomach. I'm a bit hungry. I'm very hungry and very cold. I want to drink hot porridge. I want to drink a lot of hot porridge. Historian Gui Yuan took a moment's notice, and probably did not expect Yanj to make such a request. He has been digging the valley for years, let alone eating, and he is new to the word hungry. However, thinking that the woman in front of her was still a mortal body, he quickly figured out that she couldn't break the valley, but he ignored it. "You wait," he turned to leave, and turned around at the door again. "What do you want to eat?" Yanj said, "Porridge, want to drink hot lean porridge." Giwen historian nodded, "Okay." Wuzong Zone today's diners almost did NT drop their chins. They came to Zongmen for countless years, and they were fortunate enough to see Zongmen's old ancestors. That's the old ancestors. They have a picture of the old ancestors hanging on the bedside, and they have to pay homage before daily practice, hoping that the old ancestors can bless them with smooth practice. They never expected that the old ancestors on the paper would appear alive in their eyes. I don't know who cried and shouted, "Old ancestors, my God, I'm dead without regrets." Everyone immediately burst into tears. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 428. Had it not been for the reign of Lord Giwen, they would all kneel on the ground kneeling down. Not only did their ancestors show up, but they also walked in the cooking window and said to the chef inside, "Is there a lean porridge? Give me a lean porridge." Everyone. The old ancestor came to the dining room to come for a lean congee. It must be that lean meat porridge can strengthen the body and be beneficial to practice. After a while, they will eat countless bowls of lean meat porridge to keep up with the footsteps of their ancestors. Today, there is no lean porridge in the kitchen. The chef who cooks shakes his hands to make a lean porridge for the ancestors. The chef decides to seal the pot for lean ancestors as a heirloom. Baby. Historian Gui Yuan ignored the chef's nervousness and asked in a clear voice, "What is better to eat for mortals who have been hungry for a long time?" Mortal. Mortal. So isn't this lean porridge to be eaten by Gui Yuan's son himself? The chef stammered to answer, and at the same time supplemented the brain with the ancestors and mortals had to say 2 or 3 things. I learned that it was best to drink some porridge in the beginning. His nod, Goyun, nodded, and said to the chef, in the future, you will get 1 meal at Catering Peak for 3 meals a day. I was able to swim in the Cabernet Peak for a few days, and the chef was fainted with excitement. His Holiness Gewin stepped out of the dining room steadily under the attention of everyone, knelt on the ground, tilting his head and looking at his horns. For a long time, the dining room didn't know who was crying and said, "Give me a bowl of lean meat porridge." So everyone woke up like a dream party, hurriedly crowded in the window, "Come 10 lean meat porridge. Give me 20 lean porridge. I want 100 wine, my heart is about to jump out, and I can't hold my heart without eating it." The chef stubbornly smirked. He smirked as he held his own pot that had cooked lean meat porridge for his ancestors. The pair of eyes staring at the pot were like watching his favorite, and still reaching out from time to time, gently and carefully touched a pot, and then he laughed. Pot, metamorphosis. Indecent. Shameless. Lord Gewin returned to the Cabernet Peak within a few steps. The Cabernet Sauvignon was once known as its peak. It is a mountain with lush green Cabernet Sauvignon trees everywhere, but he has been in a coma for many years, and the cold air in his body has leaked out. Today, the Cabernet Sauvignon Peak is completely a glance. White snow mountain. He thought of Shweji's mortal body that could not withstand the cold, and even though he liked the spotless white in front of him, he waved his hand to make the snow scene disappear, and replaced it with the lush red flower tree. Yanj thinks that the bowl of porridge made by Supreme Master Gewin is very fast. It is just a bowl of porridge brought out after walking around. I don't know if this kind of porridge can be drunk. When I saw Yanj, I wanted to get up, and the Supreme Master Gewin reached out to hold Yanj, so that she was half lying in bed, and then fed her spoonful of porridge. He hadn't waited for anyone. This action was very stiff and rusty, and occasionally there was porridge sprinkled on Yanj's quilt. But the next instant, before Yanji did not respond, he had already used the spell to shed the porridge. He obeyed the chef's instructions to feed Yanj and drink a bowl of porridge. Then he put the bowl away and wiped the rice grains on his lips. "Yanj, I want to drink porridge." He said, "Okay, I'll feed you later." He has a soft voice and is very petting. Yanji bowed his head and watched his long fingers wipe the corners of his lips. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 429. The tip is small, the chin is small, and the skin is as white as jade. When he touches it, he feels soft and warm, making his fingertips a little greedy and reluctant to leave. He is practicing Tianxian Gongfa. Gongfa is the treasure of the town without arrogance. This is the most suitable practice for Binglingan disciples. However, there are only half of the exercises in this order, that is, only the upper part. After practicing, I can only figure out the next part of the exercises. To this day's practice, he has been relying on his own explorations, but he did not expect that the next part of his exercises had problems. By the time he noticed, his body had already become a sign of fire. In order to solve this problem, while pinching out a lot of puppets in the Xiaoxian realm to search for the Folian girl who can convert those violent auras in his body, he sealed the Cabernet Peak and let his own body fall into sleeping status. The mortal girl in front of him wanted to come back from his uncle. When Yanj was lethargic, Gewin historian had already inspected Yanj's body. Although this woman is a rare yin body, she has a special constitution, and she has no spiritual roots in her body, and is inherently unable to practice. Mortal life is only a few hundred years. He was thinking that if she could practice, he could marry her and help her grow up, but if she couldn't practice, he could only give her the mortal the most important glory. Accept her as Sweji and take care of her life. After all, her life was short in his eyes, and protecting her for the rest of her life couldn't be easier. Yanj had been lying on the bed for so long, and his body was rusting. He drank porridge and felt the body was warm. Then he said, "Is there a bathing place here? I want to wash and change my clothes, now my clothes a little dirty." The voice went down at last, his cheeks were red and his face was ashamed. He was led by a quilt to pick her up and head out. There is a hot spring at the back of the cabernet, but he has never soaked it. And her clothes, as if he didn't have them. Go to Shanghai to find some clothes. But her eyes swept across her wonderful body. He felt that those clothes of Shanghai did not seem to suit her. Therefore, while holding his words to the hot spring, His Holiness Giwen passed the message to the elder Shangyi in the martial arts, and prepared several sets of red women's clothing, preferably with defensive attributes. Elder Shangyi's face was aggressive. "Old ancestor, is this going to be a cross-dresser? Because you have lived for too long and haven't risen, do you want to experience life with another gender?" Although those old antiques in the immortal world, all of them have a little hobby that cannot be spoken. But this hobby of his ancestors is obviously a bit too amazing. Elder Shangyi was terrified. He felt that he needed to prepare for the funeral. Of course, he had to leave a trail for himself, otherwise, if he was killed by the old ancestors at that time, his pile of favorite, "The clothes I haven't had the time to wear are not wronged." Soaking in the hot spring, Yan Ji squinted and exhaled, and finally felt that his body was warming up. Historian Gui Yuan left his song in the hot spring for a report and left. Yan Ji squinted his eyes and asked the cub, "Is Giwen the supreme?" After a long time, the cub responded in a lazy voice, yeah, this is your lord, you should sleep with him this time, don't let him be black." After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 430. Zhu Wei's voice was inserted at this time, "I have countless ways to sleep with him. If my sister wants me to teach you, in fact, I can sacrifice my body to help you sleep with him." Without waiting for the words to be answered, Zhu Wei continued to say, "Which step have you progressed to now? Have you slept with him? What is his physique? And what about that, and how about that ability? Take me out, I will help you train him, and you are satisfied with the safekeeping. Song, go." Zhu Wei's voice was weak, "Miss, I really want to be for your sake. Yanj has blocked the fan system. Hemp eggs, a chicken cub is dirty enough, plus this fox, there is always an illusion that the entire geeky system is sooty. I really want to return this gift package, hemp eggs." Lust for the warmth in the hot spring, Yanj lying in it didn't mean to go out. However, Giwen historian appeared silently and quietly after leaving. He saw that the majority of Yanj's body almost slipped into the water, raised his feet and walked towards the hot spring. His feet had just touched the water, and his clothes had disappeared spontaneously. He had thought about enclosing the woman's body so that she would not be trapped by the water. However, mastering the thin waist of Yanj, he suddenly felt a little rippling. Leaning down and leaning his chin on Yan Ji's shoulder, his lips fell on the white greasy skin, and he asked dumbly, "Shueji, what's your name?" "My name is Duan, Duan Ziyuch." The shoulder was a little itchy. She moved it slightly, and the shoulder was fixed by the man. He held her waist and one shoulder in one hand, and came in. Words of song. Therefore, most of these insatiable people are not really insatiable, because they have not tasted the flavor of the meat, and once they eat it, they will have the taste of the spine, like a wolf. It's just that Yanj did not expect that this man who has to touch the threshold of rising fairy with half a foot will be so urgent. "Ziyuch," he bowed his head and murmured in her ear, "Ziyuch, what do you wish? I will help you meet." He couldn't help her cultivate the fairy, so he wanted to fulfill all her wishes. After all, although she is mortal, she is also his woman, his benefactor. He treated her like that, and he should fulfill all her wishes. Yan Ji curled up on his neck, and a pair of watery eyes looked at him. Although his eyes were helpless, the corners of his eyes were tilted upwards, with a charming charm in his purity. "I want to repair the fairy." She hugged him tightly, like a silk flower that would fall down at any time in the wind, and wanted to climb on his big tree. Her soft voice was like a lonely leaf floating in the sea, listening to the embarrassing and timid, "I want to cultivate fairy." His heart softened at this moment. "Okay." He kissed her fluttering eyelashes. "I help you." She was his woman, and now she was brought to him unclearly, and she must have suffered countless grievances. As long as she wants to cultivate her, he helps her. After the incident, he wrapped Yanj in a blanket and sent it to the bed. He dried her hair with aura and waved his hand to make the stove in the room light up. Then he sat by the bed and told her it is difficult to cultivate the immortals, especially if your constitution is not suitable for the cultivation of immortals. If you forcibly change your body, you will suffer a lot. Afraid that Yanj didn't understand, he added, "It hurts like cutting meat and bones." He sighed and touched her soft, black hair. "Actually, you don't have to be an immortal. I will protect you, and I will find elixir to help you extend your life." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 431. The word song, wrapped in a blanket, looked up at Giwen. "I'm here to cultivate the immortal. As long as I can cultivate the immortal, I can eat any bitterness." Her face was small and pale, a pair of watery eyes squinted at him, and looking at him made him feel pity. "Okay," he said, "I help you. If you want to fix it, fix it. Anyway, if she is not willing to do it halfway, it is not a big deal." The Supreme Master Giwen promised the song and went out. Changing the physique of Yanj requires a lot of scarce medicinal materials, but this is the practice of the Supreme Master Giwen. The Xiaoxia world is free to come and go everywhere. As long as these medicinal materials can be found, the collection is not a problem. On the day when His Holiness Giwen left, it was a fat man who came to deliver meals to Yanj every day. The fat man couldn't see the words, and every time he sent the food container to the designated place, he left tremblingly. Instead, Yan Ji looked at him a few times. This Cabernet Sauvignon is about a sacred place without delusions. Mo people, even the elders, didn't come here to ask how the woman came from Yanj. Speaking of him, His Holiness Giwen didn't seem to ask her why she appeared, and why she slept with him. Could it be possible that His Holiness Giwen knows her source? Yanj thinks it should be impossible. However, it is also possible that His Holiness Giwen thought that she was sent to this place by someone he knew. After all, he had a physical condition and needed the daughter of Kuan Yin to alleviate this matter. It seems that both the suzerain and the elders knew it. After more than a month, His Holiness Giwen finally returned. He first spent a few days in the alchemy room, but many days later, he was still in a clean white robe with a light look on his face. He was not in a hurry with Yan Ji doing it, but greeted Yan Ji into the hot spring pool. The huge hot spring was divided into two by him, and he did not know what herbs he had put in the hot spring pool. Before Yanj approached, he smelled a pungent smell. The whole hot spring water was black. Mission, it looks really bad. It seems to be aware of the hesitation of Yanj. His Holiness Giwen explained, this pond contains carrion grass, but it is also equipped with a lot of herbs that can improve your bones and bones. However, after entering, there will be pain in which flesh and blood are corroded by pieces. Feel, if you can't hold it, tell me in time. Yan Ji nodded. She bowed her head and dropped her red coat, and then slowly entered the water. She suddenly noticed that the formula for improving physical fitness of Lord Giwen seemed to be no different from the formula for training muscles in her consciousness. Sure enough, the world exercises are all a routine. Because of knowing the process, Yanj also has psychological construction. Even so, after entering the water, she was still pale with the kind of ant-biting flesh and blood pain. If she didn't bite her teeth, the screams would surely rush into the sky. Lord Gewin did not speak, and from the moment the footsteps of Yanj went into the water, his mind was always paying attention to Yanj. Although his face was calm, but his heart was a little nervous for no reason. He actually hoped that she would retreat at this time. This kind of physical change that goes against the sky is too tortured. Even if he hasn't experienced it, he has heard countless people who practice this technique. Almost everyone can't insist on dying of these herbs before they die. He thought that her soft and delicate body would take such a risk and suffer such pain, and his heart was very unpleasant. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 432. So at this moment, the Supreme Master Gewin, while observing Yanj's physical condition, restrained himself not to interrupt her. After all, this is her choice, this is her body. After he promised her, he had to talk. These medicinal materials change every day, and their medicinal properties are getting stronger and stronger. In the day, Yanj is soaking in this dark medicine pool, and endures the pain of life and death. At night, she will be held by Gewin's sovereign into another medicine pool that can help her repair the wound. Although there was no pain, the water inside her wounds would make her itchy claws scratch her heart. There is no such thing as 18 floors of hell. But she was able to endure such pain. Not only her will, but also the will of the host. The host crawled out of the sea of blood to live. The host is just a little girl who has never experienced suffering, but can endure the pain of being chopped by the sword every day. Can this old demon tree be better than the host? 749 days. Every day is as long as a century. Yanji heard later, in fact, there is no self-consciousness anymore, only by a perseverance to support. But countless times, he heard from His Holiness Gewin, is it uncomfortable? Or else. Every time she trembled and trembled in response, I want to be a fairy. The pitch is out of tune, but it is also extremely determined. The host wanted Chen Sheng. When Chen Sheng stroked her, how many swords and swords she killed, and how many sisters and sisters she killed, she wanted to return all the swords. Because of the pain, she bit her own tongue. The Supreme Gewin feared that she would bite a bitch, and put a small towel in her mouth. Occasionally, he would put one of his palms in her mouth and let her bite. At first, Yanji thought about screaming, but then she had no energy to make a sound. On the last day, she emerged slowly from the pool. Her naked body was exquisite, her skin was white as good as white jade, and perfect as a jade. Mofa hangs down her waist and covers some places of her, but these places are looming every time she takes a step, making the vision of the Gewin monk aside gradually. Saburo she looked up slightly, and asked him with a smile, "Can I cultivate a fairy?" Saburo was so deep in his heart that he looked at her with a smile and a quiet voice, saying yes. She stretched her hand towards him, and her smile grew brighter, "It's good, it's good." Then the words fell softly into his arms. He took hold of her body and faintly heard her mutter, "It hurts." Yeah, this anti-physical method of reforming the physique is medicinal and overbearing. It is to corrode all her flesh and grow new flesh, and to rebuild her muscles and bones. The pain in it cannot be endured even by the cultivator. What a mortal and a woman does she rely on to last? He had wanted to hold her in the palm of his hand and make her a delicate flower that would be worry-free until death, but now she is going to be a tree. Although he was a little lost in his heart, it was okay. She was his woman and her benefactor. No matter what she did, he would help her. Yanj woke up again and checked his body for the first time. There is no spiritual root. But the flesh and bones of the body are different from the past. The former host's body was unable to draw air into the body, but now she can feel the rich aura around her with a little induction. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 433. As long as Yanj breathed, those auras had already entered her body, nourishing her muscles and flesh. The person who cultivates immortals uses Danshan to store Reiki, but her body is different now, and her flesh and bones have been developed. Now she is the device that stores Reiki. She can breathe into the body anytime, anywhere. More advanced. His Holiness Giwen sat next to Yanj's bed and waited for Yanj to open his eyes before he asked, "How? How does it feel?" Yanji nodded and smiled at Xiao Xiao. "I feel like Saber's body is not so ice cold." Before she was in front of him, shy and fearful, never so clever and cheerful as she is now. He reached out his hand with regret and touched her head. "The exercises I practice are the ice exercises, so you work hard." In fact, he knows the mortal body of Yanj, so he has hidden his breath in front of her, and did not expect to hurt her. Yanj grabbed his hand that touched his head. "I hate people touching my head the most." The voice was so sweet and tender, and also brought a trace of grievance. He laughed and never spoke. She had put his hand on her face. "You can touch my face, I think my face is soft and much better than my hair." Her face was small, but her eyes were very bright, her eyes were full of joy and dependence. Instead of touching her face, he held her back and kissed him. This time, it was extraordinarily wanton. In the beginning, he only thought that it was a matter of men and women, just to help him resolve the profound problems brought about by the exercises, just like practice. But the woman's body was so soft, he sank into it, and found Zintiandi. He is grateful to the woman in front of him. He has practiced for many years and has not been shocked for a long time, but the woman has made him have a different mind. This must be what people often say about men and women. He stagnated for many years before soaring this barrier, long enough that he even forgot time. Perhaps this change of mentality in front of him is also an opportunity for him to touch the opportunity. So he did not restrain himself. Men and women were happy, he was drunk in it, and indulged himself. In the thick of love, he deliberately runs the double cultivation method to raise the spiritual temperature in his body to support the body of the words. Yanji looked at him with a little surprise, his face glowed with red, and his eyes were haunted by the mist. He bowed his head, kissed her long fluttering eyelashes, and whispered, "Little song. Sooner or later, he wants to ascend. She is just a passenger in his life, so he wants to do everything he can to treat her while he is still alive." During the time of the Sauvignon Peak, His Holiness Giwen has been teaching mantras to practice spells. This man, he is extremely indulgent in men and women, but he will be very serious when it comes to cultivation. It was as if he didn't want Yanj to change her body, but he didn't stop her. Yanj has a special constitution nowadays, but he has two kinds of exercises that are very suitable for Yanj practice, as well as accumulation of herbs. Her cultivation is not difficult to improve. While Yanj was resting, he stepped forward to wipe her sweat. "What kind of weapon do you want?" "Sword." Yanj said. "I heard that the best disciple in Wulitsong is not only the same as Saburo, but also the supreme Kendo. I want to defeat him with a sword." He heard a smile, and during this time she often pretended to go down the mountain, and the young man was so invincible. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 434. The Supreme Master Giwen didn't take this seriously, no matter where she went or what she did, he knew it. For the sake of the ice-based exercises, he looks colder, even though his eyes are softly looking at the words and laughter, and the smile is not very angry. He asks, why beat him? He had no longer paid attention to the things in Zongmen, so even if the head told him that the disciple of the ice-based spirit root, he never remembered the name. She smiled and darted into his arms, closed his neck, raised his head, kissed his chin, and stared at him with bright eyes. "Saburo, how about telling you the day I defeat him?" It was about a spirit fight between young people. He was attracted by her pretty appearance. He never took the matter to heart, reached out, and pinched her hair between her foreheads. "Okay." Afterwards, he touched her forehead with his finger. "This is a mixed embryo that I have nurtured in the consciousness for a few days. I have not yet recognized the Lord. You try to wrap it around with the spirit of the whole body and recognize the Lord. Becomes the weapon you want." Mixed UN embryos, there are not so many pieces in the whole world, and most of them have given birth to sages, which cannot be found by the immortal, and he gave this easy mixed UN embryo so easily. She was. Yan Ji nodded, and according to the words of Giwen Tianzun, he recognized the hybrid UN embryo, and then urged his mind to turn the mixed UN embryo into the sword he wanted. These steps may seem simple, but it took more than 10 days to make a song. For more than 10 days, she was standing in place, seemingly falling asleep. Gui Yuan Tian respected her, and covered her with her own aura. The wind and rain could not disturb her. After more than 10 days, Yan Ji opened his eyes and immediately reached out and tried to summon his own magic sword. After all, this mixed UN embryo is hard to find, and it has undergone her own mental training. She had a hunch that this must be a peerless sword. A black handle slowly appeared in her hand, the handle slowly extended, and the weapon gradually took shape. But this weapon looks nothing like a sword. Yan Ji stared at the weapon in front of his eyes with a grimace. Giwen Tianzhuang frowned and asked in a suspicious song, "Little song, what is it? What weapon? Why have I never seen it?" After a pause, he asked, "Don't you want a sword?" He looked at Yan's expression, guessing that maybe Yang did not guide the mixed UN embryo into a sword when the mixed UN embryo formed. Guiming Tianzun is not a sword. In fact, it is nothing. Giwen Tianzun immediately comforted the song, "I haven't seen it before. Maybe it's the characteristics of the hybrid embryo. You can try what the magical instrument has." Yan's song is crying in the heart of the storm. In particular, after hearing the sound of Gui Yuan Tianzun's instrument being spoken, she almost smashed the instrument in front of her into pieces. What kind of is a shit, what a mixed embryo, what's so special is a wok? It looks special iron. Obviously she was thinking about the sword, how could it come out of a wok with a mouth band? As soon as Yanj was about to ask the chicken, he listened to the chicken gently whispering, "Wood, your bricks are advanced? Why is this new look a bit like the red wolf's pot? Alas, what is your aesthetic of wood? How did you turn the bricks like this?" Word song? She wanted to cry more and more. Mom, this turned out to be her own instinct. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 435. What a shit, but also a destiny, this is a deep pit dedicated to her. Yanj felt that at this moment, he really wanted to be resentful. Giwen Tianzun also looked at Yanj with encouragement, and probably wanted to see Yanj's ability as a new type of instrument. Yanj really didn't want to play a role in the cooking of this fateful science device of this guy. Mom, every minute, she wants to smash this pot in a minute. It seemed to be feeling the dissatisfaction of Yanj. A crying Q expression appeared at the bottom of the pot, but the color was black. Words of song. Silently reclaimed the pot in his own sense, and said his words to Giwen Tianzun, "Can I go to the arsenal to pick a sword?" She made no secret of the disgust of the natal device. Gui Yuanzun laughed in the heart, and wanted to reach out and rub the woman's head to appease, but thinking that she did not like this movement, she pulled her hand halfway and said, "I am here, there are also many swords." Yan Ji held back his unhappiness, and looked at him with a surprised look, "Really?" Giwen Tianzun nodded, and with a change of mind, those swords that had been lying in his storage device, which were more suitable for the physique of the song, flew out into a ring shape and spread out in front of the song. Yanj reached out and grabbed a turquoise sword. This sword looks good, so I use it. Giwen Tianzun took back the other swords, thinking that this matter had been resolved, and wanted to take his own woman to the house to do something indescribable, but Yanj shook off his hand. I will practice my hands and see how. This practice of Yanj, never sleepless, until the day when Chen Sheng married Yuan Shuang, the daughter of the arrogant Suzy Ain't. One sword smashed the ice sword in the hands of Giwen Tianzun into countless frost flowers. Yanj vacated aback and landed on the opposite side of Giwen Tianzun, doing a sword retracting style. She smiled at Giwen Tianzun. What do you think of me now? Very powerful. Guiyuan Tianzun suppressed his cultivation in the Golden Dan period, but even so, he still couldn't find a win in the words. He looked at her and said, Xiao Ji is very cultivating talent. He was amazed by the inference of the other. Yanj stepped in front of him. Then you think, I can compare with the talented disciple of you who have no delusion, who can win? Giwen Tianzun said this euphemistically enough. You see ANT practice for more than 100 days, but he has been for 100 years. If you practice for 100 years, he will not have 10 moves in your hands. Yan Ji did not refute. She still looked at Guiyuan Tianzun and smiled. The spirit in that eyebrow must not be less than her. Giwen Tianzun reached out and wanted to touch her face. A translucent paper crane fell on his hand. As soon as he was thinking, the voice of the Lordless Master came from him. Old ancestor, today is the double ceremony of my daughter Yuan Shuang and Chen Sheng. They are willing to preside over the ceremony. The Lord of Wuzong wanted to make Giwen Tianzun make a face for his daughter. Of course, the main thing was to let Giwen Tianzun see Chen Sheng at first sight, and if he wasn't sure, he could see Chen Sheng as a disciple. However, this kind of thought, no Suzy ain't Lord or hope. After all, the ancestor hadn't appeared in various celebrations of Zongmen for hundreds of years. Guiyuan Tian respected Xiang Yanj. Want to go? Yan Ji raised his head, blinked his eyes and asked him, can I stay with you? I want to be among those disciples.